Here's another question. Robert Beasy asks, Mary Baker Eddy, in her scientific statement of being, says, quote, there is no life, truth, intelligence, nor substance in matter, unquote. These words are in all capital letters because they are synonyms for God, the words life, truth, intelligence. My question is, to what degree is this true, especially in light of our understanding that crystals and many things in the physical plane have a form of consciousness?
Everything was created in the image and likeness of God. Even within the physical matter plane, you see the beauty of God, the harmony of God, the blessedness of God, and what nature demonstrates, exemplifies, and exudes. To deny that God exists within matter is to deny that God exists at all. Because God is everything, God contains everything, God created everything. Mary Baker Eddy's understanding from one perspective may seem true because spirit is what truly matters, because spirit is God. God is spirit. God is not illusion, and the matter planes that we exist in human form are temporary. God is everlasting, universal, all-encompassing. So the part of matter that is fleeting is not the fullness of God. Yet, even within matter, you have the evidence of God's beauty, God's very being, and the outpicturing of an aspect of consciousness and spirit that is densified into the matter plane. So rather than denying and denying and denying that God exists in the matter plane, we elevate the material plane to become more spiritualized, even as we spiritualize the matter plane to be more sublime. To deny is to be in duality. How about affirming that God exists within all of the creation instead of denying that God doesn't exist in a part of the creation? Mary Baker Eddy meant well, and her mission was to highlight that people could go to the source, spirit, to receive healing, inspiration, wisdom, and understanding, rather than relying on what is fleeting and not everlasting. Once you enter the dimensions of true reality, there's no dichotomy, there's unity, oneness, perfection, beingness. Within the matter plane, there will always be duality because matter was created out of spirit, yet it is not complete. It is fleeting. So with this understanding, it is a higher practice to affirm in the I am name what is real, even within matter. And so the entire I am movement, or the Saint Germain Foundation, based on my or Saint Germain's teaching, was to affirm within this dimension the I am, who is God, as this or that, and to bring through the I am power of the living word heaven's reality into this plane. this higher form of affirmation is where initiates can self-realize God even while in embodiment in the material plane, which is fleeting. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, any more?
Yeah. It's from Michael Vase. I am asking Saint Germain, would you be able to appear before the governments of this world if we gave a novena to you to simply change the dynamic?
Only by cosmic permission. I understand your desire for men to change through a dramatic manifestation. However, many have had dramatic manifestations and yet still ignored God within that miracle, that light, that happening. The karma for seeing a representative of God and then ignoring it, that representative, is great, because when you behold beauty and perfection, you must then live as that. The pure in heart shall see God. And from that point on, they must live like God through what they've seen as God. I don't recommend that you do a novena so that I appear, or Saint Germain appears before leaders of this world, because most of them cannot be trusted. It would be better to pray for guidance for these leaders to act in accordance with God's will, because even my appearance before them does not necessarily mean that they will then, from that day forward, fulfill the will of God in their lives. An appearance is an appearance. Look at the word appearance. What does that connote? It appears to be this, right? So me appearing to people, is that, from their perspective, a reality? An apparition is something that is fleeting. I am not fleeting. I am in the permanency of God. So an apparition or an appearance is temporary. Fixing within one's own mind and heart and being and soul and will the I am experience of knowing God is more important. And so it would be better to pray for righteous leaders to come forth and do a novena so that the right hearts with the greatest attainment rise to positions of responsibility and authority in leadership of governments, and to also pray for the synarchy to occur sooner than later. We think that we can change others. Can we? Even ascended masters cannot change people's hearts, views, beliefs, paradigms. They can offer a new perspective, a higher way, wisdom. Yet, when you study history, many who have misused power desired that power for themselves. And that's the rub. Many of these leaders must serve in leadership to balance karma, to be humble, and to right the wrongs that they have been involved in past lives. They won't do that simply through an appearance. They will do that when prompted from within to do it. And when you pray for the right promptings, the inner promptings to come forth within the individual and personal lives of these leaders so that they can be restored to wholeness and understand the dynamics of every one of their decisions, and that they must move forward to act not out of ego but out of the goodwill for all, then their actions, their decisions will be more in alignment with God's will. Every leader in their soul appreciates prayers on their behalf for them to act in accordance with God's will. So focus on this, that every leader acts in accordance with God's will in every decision made. The boost that they will receive spiritually may assist them in outpicturing this. An appearance one time, however great, noble, wondrous, alchemical, miraculous, will disappear after a short time. And some will even question what they have seen as not being real, or that it wasn't real. So, thank you, Michael, for the question.
This is from Boyana. Can Saint Germain please give advice to young people on how to distinguish God's insight voice from within lower astral plane experience and experiments such as astral projection? How to distinguish what should be avoided in the initial path of a disciple in order not to lose the right track in general? Because, for instance, the gift of discernment is initially not so well developed when first in contact with the subtle world.
You've heard the term that I made 2 million right decisions in my life. Every one of those right decisions was based on a consciousness wed to spirit, a mind true to what is optimal, blessed, sponsored by heavenly hosts, and rich in grace, mercy, kindness, and the virtues of God. It were better for many to avoid entering into any communication with otherworldly spirits in any form, and focus on true individual spirituality through developing virtues. Because many simply do not have the mooring in those virtues to have the purity of consciousness, so that when they enter into or delve into what some call the inner worlds, they do indeed contact the astral world, which is the world of illusion and Maya. So this is why in the Heart Center you have a messenger who worked for 30 years before we called him to do his work outwardly. And why many of you had the same mooring in spirituality before you were called in your own way to support this mission or engage in deeper spiritual work that required entering into higher realms. So focus on the virtues, focus on the disciplines of prayer and meditation, a daily effort to root out the elements of the ego through working on your psychology, and lead people away from the psychic and attempting to develop their psychic powers or to be a channel or this or that, because an 80+% of the cases, most people will, unfortunately, go into areas that are more dangerous or could result in their losing their light through all manner of psychicism, which isn't true spirituality. Yes, Blessed One, discernment is the key. Yet first discern that the path upward is worth the inconvenience of daily spiritual work on self. And only when you've developed a great momentum of invoking the light, contacting the light, and being the light, can you be entrusted with a greater mission of sharing the deeper mysteries and of entering into work that involves accessing the higher wisdom teachings from the greatest levels of the etheric plane and beyond. Avoid psychicism, enter into the spiritual path of virtue through prayer and meditation, contemplation, deep reflection, eradicating vices of every kind, and mobilizing your whole being to love God with your whole being and your neighbor as yourself. So that's the answer to that one. Okay?
St. Germain, as Francis Bacon, you backed the board of directors and the investment team that founded Jamestown, Virginia, for planting the seeds in America for the freedom that would come forth later. You also tried to plant the seeds in the Masonic groups and other groups in France, which unfortunately did not bring forth the same result originally. How are you and the Masters going to bring forward freedom for every nation for the Aquarian Age?
It was accelerated through the I Am movement, the St. Germain Foundation, through Godfrey Ray King, and continues through other sponsored Ascended Master movements, including the Heart Center community. When there's a groundswell of prayer support, of invoking the violet transmuting singing flame, or the violet consuming flame, and millions of people do this, then you have the wherewithal to have a better foundation, a greater foundation that reaches into every avenue of society. Technology, education, business, administration, where the rubber meets the road and there's an application of the seventh ray teachings into the everyday world of normal common people. The key that we see, though, moving forward is education, because when people know better, they will do better. Unfortunately, the educational systems in the United States have been compromised to the point where we can't entrust most of the young people today to understand the simple and basic knowledge of what the initiatic path is, because they're being programmed to believe that religion is terrible, that the history is different than what their parents were taught and their parents' parents were taught. And so we have to lay a new foundation of education that is based on reality and actually the Akashic records of history. So one thing that will shift everything is when technology is advanced, the people can actually see the Akashic records of what has transpired in the past, what is transpiring now, and what even could be in the future when right choices are made. So when you have the technology that can look at the Akashic records, you also have the technology that can look into the future to see the possibilities of what could occur based on choices. This is something you may not have realized, that the Akashic records are also not just what has occurred, because there is no time in the human sense and space in the human sense and the universal. And we see the continuum and the spirals of free will manifest in the lives of people, and the potentials in the future which are actually being outplayed based on choices now. So to have a righteous civilization and culture is really our goal. And to have a righteous civilization and culture means it is based on following the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And everything else comes into perfection when that one divine law is obeyed. Everything comes into perfection because everyone does everything in accordance with God's will, wisdom, and love when you follow the golden rule. So this golden rule must become the standard for all behavior that is taught in every religion or just no religion. And when that golden rule is understood and applied in every life, then you will see harmony return and the new culture, the new solar civilization dawning, because it cannot dawn fully without the golden rule being lived. In terms of secret societies, these are even temporary because eventually everything gets revealed and nothing is secret anymore. So why have secret societies when everything will be revealed? What is more important now is individuals who have Christ consciousness and God attainment coming into these positions of responsibility and authority to then lead every aspect of society upward and onward and into the future with great Aquarian love and vision and artistry and music and science. So every university, every college must be infused with a new light of Aquarian energy. This is how we will change civilization, from the ground up through education. So this is why it's important to have Meru learning centers where children at a young age learn all of these things. They apply them in games and stories and educational materials that challenge them and teach them about the path. This is why in this movement of the Heart Center, you must focus on families and youth and children more and more, because education is the key. Without the right education, souls are misled, and then they will walk down a road that is not optimal because they've been taught this. They've been taught a false theology, a false religion. They've been taught a false history, especially ancient history and previous civilizations that occurred that have fallen. They don't know about Atlantis and Lemuria. It's not taught in the history books. They don't know about past golden ages, the rise and fall of all these civilizations. So who's going to teach them? Those who have the understanding based on deep study, based on their own attainment, and their ability to be persuasive with truth. Truth itself is persuasive based on the energy of it that comes when it is purveyed and conveyed with love. Truth is persuasive. Remember this. You don't have to persuade somebody through intellectual reasoning over and over, because the human mind cannot grasp truth. The heart understands deep truth through its own virtue when it is in resonance with the heart of God. So focus on educating the heart as well as the mind, assisting the will through work and service and action, and then you will have balanced children who become adults, who become citizens. Until you have balance in society and the educational system, you will never have what is required for a golden age. So begin with education, education, education. And when there is true learning of everything from the perspective of heaven and the desire of God to illumine, enlighten individuals, then you will see the dawning of the golden age, because the golden age occurs, look at the term golden, it is about education and about learning, understanding, and wisdom. So to have a golden age, you must have the greatest universities, colleges, and school systems that convey truth and the holiness of deep understanding that comes through wonderful teachers who themselves are enlightened teachers. So I hope that answers the question. Okay?
This is from Nicola Wawitka. What is spiritual artistry for children as it relates to the creative arts, and how can we provide it for children?
Love expressed through music and every art form that elicits the love of the heart to be expressed in what is created. You have to share with children how they can access love within them to then be expressed through whatever modality or medium they feel called to utilize, whether it's music, poetry, art of any kind, drama, studying literary, historical contexts. When children know that they can create something from the heart, then into form, and that all true Aquarian co-creativity comes from the heart, then they can be victorious in creating something that has value, has resonance with heaven's beauty, and that truly ennobles life and inspires people. So the goal of co-creation through artistry of any kind, that it is inspiring to others. It is motivating them to be a better person by being beautiful, pure, resonant, and invocative of angels and higher beings and light and color and divine sound. So anything that expresses something that's godly is Aquarian beauty. Unfortunately, mankind's taken God out of the schools and light out of the schools because they've taken God out of the schools. So you don't have the light that then children can access to be expressive of something that's godly. So true love and light have to return to the school systems so the children can then try to express something that is inspirational and that will benefit life, rather than just something that is created because we're supposed to just let loose our emotional body and throw paint on a canvas or create some dissonance that we call music that's not really music. we've been jaded by the university systems and even going down into the high school, middle school, and elementary schools to teach children that their creativity just comes from throwing something out there without any training or quality or inner expression that comes from a deep space of inner peace and blessedness. So children naturally are creative. They desire to profoundly do something that their parents will love, their teachers will love. Inspire them by inspirational art. Let them listen to good classical music. Let them see the art of the Renaissance period and the great masters. Return children to learning what our forebears learned of history and art and science and knowledge of all kinds. This historical context has been removed from the school systems, and then you see the results in a decadent society. Decadence must give way to new decades of virtue and true artistry, which comes from mindfulness and heart-centeredness. You have within what you've created, Nicola, something beautiful to share with the world for parents and teachers, and then ultimately for children. The rub is to get it into the hands of these parents and these teachers and these school systems so they can use it. And that's where marketing comes in and promotion. And that's the hardest part of any artist's desire to get their work viewed by and shared with other people. And so heaven requires divine marketers and promoters. This is one of the most important things, because it's one thing to create a book or a novel or a piece of music or a piece of art. It's another to get it viewed and shared. So pray for those who have the marketing and promotional skills and the advertising skills to help the Ascended Masters get their message to the world, and then every artisan of the Spirit get their art to the world. Nowadays you have the internet, yet there's so much out there. To have a unique voice that's blessed and beatified is the key. And then to have the right sponsors and the right means of getting it to the world. So that's what you can pray for. Okay.
This is from Susanna Abu Mahar. Saint Germain, what advice could you give us as a community?
It's pretty open-ended. Show up, express love in new, noble, powerful, dynamic ways through all of your created efforts. Use what's already been released and allow it to be expressed in new ways. Foster the new generation's enlightenment and self-realization by focusing on families and youth and children, because this is where the future will bring great change and transformation. After the Super Angels project is done with the feminine archangels, the archei, consider a new round of super elemental videos including the beautiful fairies. Work while you have the light. Pray for David and the entire Heart Center leadership to bring forth the most wonderful new 5-year plan, inspired by the Holy Spirit at the upcoming 2-day face-to-face council meeting. And pray for all International Heart Friends to join forces and really firing the international community to get these teachings in every language. All the books, audiobooks, everything in every language out in the world. Because there are thousands and millions waiting for these teachings. And what they're waiting for is the translation. So pray for Boyd, pray for assistance for the hardworking staff so that they have the support that they require to do what they know needs to be done, or that we choose to do, yet we only have so many hours in the day and so much time to do what we do. And then lastly, discernment, discernment, discernment. There are some who have come and they expect things to be a certain way based on past paradigms, and then it doesn't occur, and then they leave, and they have great abundance or they have great gifts. Yet this is a new energy and a new movement. You have to be ready for change. So the final thing is to be ready for change. And don't look at change as being a negative. It's an opportunity for self-transformation and for growth. So everyone has to be ready to grow. And we all can grow up more, every last one of us, from the messenger to the new person on the block. And growth comes through challenge. Growth comes through, sometimes through people that challenge you with a different perspective. So it's good to have different perspectives and different outlooks, and you can't just operate out of a closed consciousness that says, well, we haven't done it this way in the past and therefore we won't do it that way. Openness and a liberal type of mind that's open to new possibilities is always the way to move forward, rather than a closed-mindedness that says, the masters wouldn't approve of this. This is David now. I like to say, I heard from someone who helps lay out our books that somebody said, oh, David would never approve that. And so they didn't do it, or it wasn't, brought to me in a certain way. And then that person brought it to me anyway, and then of course I approved what they had. So we can't have intermediaries that block things from occurring with new insights and thought processes and new alchemical vision. So be open to new ways, and then those new ways may challenge your thinking or your paradigms, yet they may be the exact thing that should be done to get the word out to thousands and millions of people. So this is why the Heart Center movement was formed, because the previous one was not open to a new messenger. So be open to new messengers too. So that's the final word. And if there's any other questions, Boyd, we can print them out and maybe we'll answer them in the future in some other way, okay?